So I think I've probably managed to introduce myself to everybody. I'm Rachel, Senior Researcher here and Head of UK Mid. So this is our second webinar. Last time we focused on monthly reporting, and hopefully those of you who didn't join that webinar in person have had a chance to catch up with the recording on our website. So as before, we just start with a little bit of housekeeping. I've muted everybody, so you should be able to hear me but not speak, and that improves sound quality for everybody. We want to encourage questions from you, so if you want to ask a question or make a comment, please use the chat facility. So this time I've got David with me. He's going to monitor your questions as we go along, so I can keep focused on what I'm talking about. We might stop partway if that makes sense, but otherwise we'll deal with questions at the end, unless there are things that come up as we go along that are important. So I'm going to start with a very brief recap and reminder on monthly reporting, and then I'm going to tell you briefly about the UK Mid folders that we'll be sending out at the end of this week. But for most of the session, we're going to focus on the more detailed data that we'll be needing on your cases and controls, and take you through how you can send us those data using Open Clinica. So this is what we covered last time. Just to remind you, it's your role to be the main point of contact for UK Mid, identify cases, report to us every month, and then enter data on your cases and your controls. And again, remember that for this year, the UK Mid study is on severe obesity, so this is the case definition. These are the women that we're collecting information about. So at the beginning of every month, you'll receive your monthly reporting email, and you'll get your first one of those on the 1st of February, which will be asking you about your data for the month of January, so this month that we're in now. That's, if you remember, this is what your monthly reporting email will look like, and you'll be able to provide your report by clicking on the link in that email. And you will get to this screen where you can enter your cases, or 0 if you had no cases for that month, and the data about your numbers of women admitted and giving birth in your unit for that month as well. So this is the email confirmation that you'll receive once you've sent us that report. Includes the case IDs for any cases that you've reported. You can also see a link here which will take you direct to the data entry system. And again, we talked about this last time, but remember, for each case we'll also ask you to identify your controls. So that's 2 controls, and they're the 2 women admitted for labour care in the unit immediately before the case. But all this should be familiar to you. So this week, before we move on to the data entry system, I just want to let you know that we're sending each centre a folder for you. This has a guide in it which will take you through the reporting and data entry process in a step-by-step way. We'll also have the study protocol, the ethics-approved protocol, contact details for all of us here, a poster that you can put up in your unit, and the case log, which I referred to last time. I've mentioned it already. It's quite straightforward. It's really just a way for you to keep track of the cases you report to us and their associated controls. So you can avoid reporting the same woman twice, for instance. You can write the case ID on the left there, the date you reported it, and then the intention is that you would stick the woman's address, the graph label for the case and the 2 controls alongside that. Just a reminder that the approvals for UK Mid mean that we don't have permission to collect any identifiable information. So that means that if we have to get back to you with a query, if you've got the information in your case log, you should be able to identify the right woman's notes. But please don't ever send us any identifying details for cases or controls. So going back to your confirmation email, remember there's a link at the bottom here which will take you to the data entry system. Just a few points to remember about data entry. You need Internet Explorer or Mozilla Firefox. I think most of you will be on Internet Explorer, preferably 9 or above. If you have Internet Explorer version 8, some of the things I'm going to talk to you about may not work for you, but we have ways around that. So and we're working on resolving that as well for the longer term. So it would be helpful to know if you have Internet Explorer 8, but it's not a disaster, so don't worry too much about it. All the information you need should be in the woman's notes. you can, I'm going to go through the data entry system, but you'll see that you can start entering data, you can save it, and you can go back and complete it later. There are some particular issues about date and time formats that I'll highlight as we go through, and also you'll see all the way through the form that we have this little blue question mark thing where you'll be able to hover over that and see that you can get some guidance about each question. So I'm just going to move over to the data entry system shortly. Chantel, I think you've asked a question, I just want to answer that before we move on. So you've said, let me just read through it. So when I'm talking about the number of births for that month that you want to enter into the system, I'm talking about the birth centre. Yeah, absolutely. So just your birth centre, so that's women admitted to the birth centre for labour care and women giving birth there. Okay? Right, so just bear with me while I go to Open Clinica a moment. Okay? So you should be able to see the login page for Open Clinica here. So this is the Open Clinica login screen. I can't type and talk at the same time, I've discovered. So I'm going to stop talking while I enter my username and password. But this is where you will enter. You will receive your own username and password by email in a few days before the beginning of February. So you will have your own username and password, and the first time you log in, you'll be asked to change the password to something that's easier for you to remember. You can also see that there's a forgot password link there. So if you do forget it, you can get it back again. So I'm going to stop talking because otherwise I'll enter this in wrong. Okay, so once you've logged in, you'll see a slightly different screen to this. I can see, because I'm logged in as a data manager, I get through to a home page first, so I can see all the units that report to UKMid. So you'll only be able to see your unit. But at the top, you can see you'll be able to see your username in the top right, and at the top here, where I can see UK Midwifery Study System, you will see the name of your unit. So the page that you will see when you log in will look a little bit like this. It's your home page, and it's what we call the subject matrix page. It will show your cases, the cases that you have reported down here. Each case is one line. Before I go on to talk a little bit more about that, some of you report for more than one unit, just a small number of you. So if this is the case, you'll need to check what unit is showing at the top of the page, and it will be the unit name will be here as well. If you want to enter data for a woman from a different unit from the one shown, you'll need to click here on Change Study Site, and select the unit that you want from the list, and then click Confirm, and then you'll see the right unit. I'm just pausing because I've got people asking me a few things. So I'll deal with Catherine's question first. Women that are admitted with high BMI who are transferred out. We'll come to that in a minute, but yes, the women who are admitted with a high BMI who are transferred out, we want data about anybody who's admitted with a BMI greater than 35. And we'll have a look at the data that we'll be collecting about transfer in a minute, because we'll go through the form step by step. Okay, so this is, as I said, this is your subject matrix page. You can see your study subject IDs, your case IDs down the side here. Now, before I go any further, don't worry too much. This does look complicated. It's not the nicest looking website you've ever seen. It is easier to use than it looks, so bear with me. And much of what you can see here you needn't worry about at all. So we just need to focus on this bit in the middle for the time being. And as you get to use this, it will become much more familiar to you, and it will feel less scary. So don't worry too much about it. So as I said, each line here represents a case with its associated controls. So you can see the case column here and the control here, and the reason that it has a ×2 here is because we're asking for data on 2 controls for each case. Again, here you can see lots of cases because we're looking at this from my point of view, so I can see a whole lot of cases from every unit. you'll only ever see the cases that you've reported in your unit. So for cases and controls where no data have been entered, you'll see a blue icon here. So looking at this case here that is now highlighted in yellow because I'm hovering over it, you can see a blue icon under case alongside the subject ID, so that's no data entry have been started on that case at all. Where a form has been started but not completed, there's an amber icon, and where it's been completed, it's green. If you have a long list of cases like I do, you can move to the next page by clicking on the green arrow here. Okay, that's taken us to the next page. If you want to search for a specific study ID, you can do that in the top right here. You can just type in the case ID and click go, and that will take you to the one that you're particularly looking at. So, to enter data on a case, you've got this case here, let's take this one. You need to click on the blue icon alongside underneath case, and you can see here it comes up with view, enter data, and you click on that. And this takes you to this screen. You can see the case ID here, and in order to start entering data, you need to click on this icon here. If you hover over it, it says enter data. And that takes you to the first data entry screen. I'm just going to see if I can make this a bit bigger. Okay, so you can see the subject ID at the top. You can see that the form is in several sections. You can move from section to section by clicking on this arrow at the top. You can click on a particular section by clicking on the tab. And in fact, you can also select sections here. You can see, as I said before, where there's an icon with the question mark icon, you can hover over it and it comes up with information about that question. So the first bit of information here relates to the case definition, and it reminds you that for a case, the BMI at booking should be greater than 35 to meet the case definition. Now, if you get this far, you've reported a case and you look in the notes and you actually discover that the woman's BMI is not greater than 35 and that you've mistakenly reported that woman as a case, please don't enter any more data at this point. We want you to contact us and we will remove that case effectively. But we don't want you entering full form, full of data, if the woman's not actually a case after all. So here you can start entering data. You can move from one question to the next using the tab key. So I'm going to start entering data here, so you can see how it looks as we do it. I'm going to enter some data which may not be typical, just so we can illustrate a few points. So I'm going to leave some things blank, and I'm going to enter in something that might not be quite right. So here on question 1.4, you can see, is the woman currently in paid employment? If I click yes, it opens up another box where we would like you to enter in some information. If you click no there, in fact, let me click no. If you click no, it comes up with a question about the partner's information if the woman was not in paid employment. But we'll carry on with yes. Here, the Children in Low-Income Families Measure score is something that you probably never have heard of before, and that's absolutely fine. It certainly won't be recorded anywhere in the woman's notes. It's something that is derived from the woman's postcode, and as I said earlier, we're not allowed to collect any identifying details, so that includes postcode. So here, there's a link in the form. You can click on it. It takes you to a dedicated lookup page where you can enter in the postcode, and when you've done that, it will come up with a score. It's highlighted for you, and all you need to do is copy and paste that score back into the box. So that should be fairly straightforward. Height at booking. There's an option there to say that the woman's height wasn't recorded. weight. And date. Now, there's an icon here which enables you to pick a date, and it will ensure that the date you enter goes in the right format. I'm going to enter the date in the wrong format just to show you what happens if you do that. And there's also an option here to say that the woman's minimum weight wasn't recorded. Maximum weight and date. I'm going to use the right format of date there, so it shows you how it should look like. Smoking status, there's a number of options. So I've completed that section, and I'm going to click Save. Okay, now you can see here with a few issues with the data that I have entered. This is a little bit of a glitch in the form, so this won't come up for you. I'm going to change it, but you needn't worry about that. It's highlighted the fact that the date I put in was in the wrong format, so I'd advise you always to use the calendar icon because it makes it a lot easier. This is certainly not an intuitive format for anybody. So I've made those changes and click Save. Okay, now it's come up with some other issues here. The age of delivery is 53, I put in, but it's saying, well, we expect the age range to be between 17 and 40. That's not to say that you won't ever have women with an age that's outside this range, but it's a way of us checking that something hasn't been entered incorrectly or by mistake. And also it's picked up that I haven't entered a value for ethnicity. There is actually an option to say that ethnicity wasn't recorded, and I missed that the first time, so I'm going to correct that. Age of delivery I'm going to leave as it is because that's what I think is the right age for this woman, and I'm going to save the form as it is. Okay, so it's saved that. I'm just going to go back and show you what's happened, how that section looks now. So you can see that next to the data that I've entered, there are these little blue flags. Next to the age at delivery, because that age wasn't in the range that we expected it to be, the little flag there is red, and it's showing that next to it, if you hover over that flag, you can see that it was expecting something else. I'm just going to leave that until later to go back and tell you how we'd like you to deal with what are called discrepancy notes, where there's something not quite right that's been saved in the form. I'm going to go on to section 2 and take you through the form section by section, and just to show you the kind of questions that we have here that we'll be asking you about. So, has the woman had any previous pregnancies? If you answer yes to this, it opens up a few supplementary questions. Assisted conception, EDD, all should be fairly straightforward. You can see that there's a little bit of information for you around some of these. There's information here where you can hover over, showing you the kind of information that we are asking for in relation to these specific questions. Questions 2.4 and 2.5, if you answer yes, these will open another box which will ask you to give more information, exactly what kind of medical complication are we talking about. Okay, so you can just enter that information in yourself. I'm going to click Exit here and show you what happens if you try and exit the form without saving. So it's saying you've got some unsaved data. Are you sure you want to exit? And obviously we don't really want to exit without saving ever. So I'm going to cancel that. But it's just a little reminder that when you want to leave one section, move on to the next, you do need to click Save. Okay, obviously that's come up with a whole load of errors because I've left things blank here, but I'm going to ignore them and go on to the next section. So again, just take you through. So date and start of labour care and date of start of labour care and time. Stage of labour, there's some extra information for you here, just to remind you what we're talking about. Question 3.3 is slightly different from the ones you've seen before. We are asking you to go through this list and tick at least one of these boxes, even if it's only none of the above, which is the option at the bottom. So on initial assessment at the start of labour care, were any of the following identified? I suspect that in many cases you'll be ticking none of the above. For each of these, there's a little bit of information to explain exactly what we're meaning. Maternal pyrexia, for instance, there's a definition. Okay, immersion in water, straightforward, yes, no, unknown. So this is, I think it was Catherine who was asking about the questions that we'll be asking about transfer. So in some cases, women will be admitted for labour care and they'll be transferred out during labour. So if you click yes, here it opens up a whole range of other questions. So the date and time of the decision to transfer, the primary reason for transfer. We've got a range of options here. If you click other, it will open a box asking you to give more information. And some other questions here about labour augmentation, epidural, general anaesthetic, and so on. That's the section that specifically relates to women who are transferred. Going back to the rest of the form, was this multiple pregnancy? I suspect that will be quite unusual, but if it is, you'll be asked to enter the number of babies and then enter the date and time of birth for each baby. So you'll enter the date and time here, and then if there is another baby, then you can click add here and enter the date and time there. You can see there's a question here about place of birth. So was the woman, did the woman give birth in the AMU? So she was transferred to the care of an obstetrician. In some places, this might happen. She didn't move physically, but she was under the care of the obstetrician in the AMU when she gave birth. Obstetric unit if it was a physical transfer of the woman to the consultant-led unit or unknown. Birth in water, mode of birth. If you tick cesarean here, it opens up a range of supplementary questions about grade of urgency, primary reason. There, shoulder dystocia, very straightforward. And again, another yes/no question there. So I'm going to move on to the next section. Section 4 is on maternal outcomes. Fairly straightforward. Now I want to highlight question 4.3. Within the first 48 hours after giving birth, was the woman admitted to a higher level of care? So there are several options here. No will be the case for most women, but there's an option for if the woman was admitted to higher level care. You can click one of these. These remaining questions are fairly straightforward. Now, if you save at this point, ignore those and press save again. When you enter these data, you'll be entering things here, obviously. But this is the only question which appears in this way. So at this point, if you've clicked one of the yes options, you'll see that there are supplementary questions that appear here. What was the main reason? The total duration of the stay in either hours or days. And then at that point, you can save and move on once you've entered those data. Section 5 is about baby outcomes. Again, fairly straightforward. Birth weight set, stillbirth, APGAR at 5 minutes. Was the baby admitted to neonatal unit? Here, just yes, and that opens up some straightforward supplementary questions. Any other neonatal morbidity, again, one of those questions where there's, if you click yes, you need to give us the specific reason. Again, I'm just going to move on to the next section. Section 5A is a repeated section which you'd only ever complete if it was a multiple pregnancy, so this is unlikely to be needed for most of you. And the final section is section 6, where it's just got one question you can enter, gives you the chance to enter any other information that you think might be important. Remember, please don't enter any personal details which might identify the woman here or anywhere else on the form for that matter. So at this point, if you've got to the end of the form, you've entered everything, you've finished your data entry, the first thing you need to do is to mark the CRF complete. So you need to tick on this little box here, and it says marking the CRF complete finalises data entry. Just a reminder that if you want to, you can edit the data later, but you have to do that in a different way. So it's a reminder that you need to mark the CRF complete before you save it. So here, you click OK, and then you need to click Save. Okay, so that's that form complete, and you can see that the little icon there has gone green to say that you've marked the form complete and you've finished data entry on that form. So I want to go back to the subject matrix again and find that case, which is this one, to show you what you do if you've marked a form complete and you want to go back and edit the data you have entered. But before I do that, I wonder if it would be sensible just to answer any queries that have come up specifically about the form. Was there anything, Dave?
There's one question from Emma regarding question 3.5. And the question is, all women with a BMI greater than 35 are automatically under consultant care. So what would they enter?
So for this study, for UK Mids, we are only interested in women who are admitted to labour care to the midwifery unit, who have a BMI greater than 35 at booking. Now, are you saying, Emma, that the women you admit to the midwifery unit whose BMI is over 35 are under consultant care but admitted to the midwifery unit?
The pathway is at booking. If they've got a BMI over 35, they'll automatically be under consultant care, but some women will be allowed to labour on the alongside unit.
Okay.
But it doesn't fit that question.
No, you're right. It doesn't
how you want us to answer that.
Yeah, so it doesn't fit that question, and I think we definitely don't want you to answer it as if they were transferred out of the unit, if you like. I think the best answer
should be transferred to obstetric side.
Yes, it is really. So it's really only the women who are transferred, in your case, that we're interested in during labour. Yeah, we would want that transfer question answered.
Or it may be that they stay in that room, but the consultants become involved, or an obstetrician becomes involved.
That's what we're talking about, really. So does the obstetrician become involved in their care? That's what we're interested in. So I'm going to make a note of that. So it's about the wording, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, because they're nominally under a consultant, when it's ward round time, they will want an update and all the rest of it. So, although they might not physically go in the room, they'll be sort of notionally under their care as opposed to a midwifery-led woman.
Yes, exactly. That's an unusual situation, at least for in terms of our experience so far. The question is about sort of escalation of care, if you like, or transfer, as we would normally understand it. But we need to make sure that that's interpreted appropriately. I mean, because for somebody who's just sort of you know, as you say, if there's just a chat outside a room, that's not really what we're thinking.
Yeah, what you mean.
Yeah.
So if the doctor's called in to review or whatever, to review something, lack of progress or something, whether that means she's, because ours is just literally, you know, the other side of the corridor, so she might not physically be moved, but they might be involved. So either of those things.
That's the kind of thing we're thinking. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Another question from Lindsay Phillips. I think it's regard to if a case has been reported in error, how are those reported to the UK MIDS team?
So you need to email us on the UK MIDS email address, which is ukmids@npeu.ox.ac.uk.
Should they give you the case ID as well?
Yes, they should, absolutely, yes. Yeah. Any other questions before we
There's another one from Chantal Winstanley. Can we only enter data at the end of the month upon receiving the notification email?
Yes, so you will only, so when you, what will happen is on the 1st of February, let's use that as your example, you'll receive your email asking you to report on cases for January. As soon as you report any cases, you will have the case IDs for those women will be generated for you, and you will be able to enter data on those straight away. So you can't enter this more detailed data until you have reported a case, because that's the process which generates the cases in the data entry system, the case IDs. Once the case IDs are generated for you and you've had confirmation of that, you can enter the data, you can start entering data at any point. Okay? Is there anything else?
There was one other question, I think.
There was one other question from Catherine. Women in this unit note carry will be unable to access the notes for at least a month after delivery. Okay, so that's about access to notes and people not having access to their notes, or midwives not having access to notes until a few weeks afterwards. I think I need to clarify exactly how you might work around that, but I think I want to leave that to the end, if that's okay with you, and we might be able to discuss that in more detail. Okay, I'm going to go back to the subject matrix, to that form that we marked complete, which is this one. Now, do you remember we entered a couple of things that were not quite typical, and in particular we entered the woman's age as something that was outside the range that we've expected. So that raised that what we call a discrepancy note, that little red flag next to the question. Now we will follow up those red flags with you. We will because that's a query that we want to check. It's data that we want to check whether that data are absolutely correct. So it will save work for you and for us if, when you enter the data, you can give us as much information about that as possible. So the way to do that is you've been through the form, you've entered all your data, you've marked it complete. At this point, you can go back into the form and give us a little bit more information about that little red flag that was raised because we entered the age outside range. So if you do that, you can click on the green icon and you go into View, Enter Data, and here now that icon where you previously clicked on to enter data and you hovered over and it said enter data, it now says administrative editing. So this is what you can do to go back into the form to give us a little bit more information about it. So here we've gone back to the place where we have this red flag, and now you can click on the red flag. Okay, and at this point what we want to do is we want you to click on, you can see it says proposed resolution here. So we click on proposed resolution. This is where you can enter some information which will tell us a little bit more about that data. So remember we entered that the woman was 53, but from our point of view, we're concerned that you might have entered that wrongly because it's an age that we wouldn't expect. Maybe you meant to enter 35, but you just typed the digits the wrong way around. So in this case, if the woman really was 53, you can type that in here. You can type in, I can't type at the same time as talking, as I've already said. You can write, woman's age is correct, 53. You can type in whatever you like, but whatever will communicate to us that you enter 53 and you meant to enter 53. Okay? And then here you can see that the status here is resolution proposed. This is you saying, I'm resolving this little problem for us. And at that point you can click submit and exit. It tells you that it saves that. Now that flag is still red, but I think if
you navigate to another section,
go back to a different section and go back to section 1, you can see that the flag is green. We've now got some information here which helps us resolve that and means that we're unlikely to have to contact you to say, is that woman's age really 53? So every time one of these little red flags is raised, it really helps us and will save you time later having to go back and check if you can give us that information at the time. Okay, I'm going to exit this again and go back to the subject matrix again. So to remind you then, you report your cases, but you've also identified 2 controls per case, and if you want to, we'll be asking you to enter data about those 2 controls as well. The process for that is exactly the same. If you click on one of these blue icons, you can see that there are 2 what are called occurrences of this control form. So that's basically 1 form for each control woman, and you can click on view, enter data for each of these, and it will take you through a form which is almost exactly the same as the case form. So it asks for pretty much exactly the same data. There are some very minor differences which you may not even notice, and you'll need to go through the exact same process that we've done with the case for each of the controls. I'm not going to go through that in detail because it's exactly the same. And when you've done that, you'll get something that looks like this. You'll have the green icon for both those forms. The form has been completed. Okay, so then the only other thing I want to show you, I think at this point, is on your subject matrix page. You can also see this is a notes and discrepancies tab at the top here. This is the other way you can see all your discrepancy notes. So that's your red flags. And if you click on that, you can then see all the flags that are red or were once red. Here you can see each one line for each of these. You can see the subject ID next to them, and you can see the issues. So you can see all of them there. And it's another way to edit these is to go in via here. You can have a look, but it's exactly the same process. Propose resolution, enter the details there, and submit and exit. So it's exactly the same. It's just another way to have a look at those discrepancies. And again, if you propose a resolution, then the flag will go green. Go back to the subject matrix page. Once you've done everything that you want to do, you can click on log out, and that will take you out of the system altogether. So I think that's all I wanted to take you through. I'm quite happy to go back over some things if there are questions, or if you've missed something or you're not sure about. We've been piloting this form over the last couple of weeks, and it looks as if the forms are taking the case form. The first case form that was completed took about 15 minutes to complete, but it was noticeable that the control forms that were completed were quicker. So whether that's just a sort of familiarity thing, I don't know whether the woman, their care was more straightforward, so there were fewer of those supplementary questions that were opened. So that's likely to get less as you become more familiar with the form. But that's the sort of order of time that we think is likely to take to do this. I think I'm happy to finish that there, unless there are any questions. Dave, do you have any questions that have come up or other things that you want to say?
No other questions. Oh, one has just come.
How quickly do we need us to reply to the monthly email? Okay, that's a good question. So the monthly email arrives on the 1st of February. You can take as long as you like to reply. Ideally, we'd like you to report as soon as possible. But from your point of view, you don't want to get too far behind with your cases. It depends how many cases you have, obviously. But we will start chasing. But the main thing is from your point of view, you'll be getting another monthly email on the 1st of March and so on. So you don't want to get too far behind. Because that will just make it more difficult for you. So as soon as you can, we won't start chasing for a little while. But try not to get too far behind. Another question there. Just clarify the number of deliveries per unit. Is that the alongside unit women or the whole unit? Helen, I might need you to unmute yourself. To explain exactly what you mean there, so that I make sure I'm answering the right question.
Hi, it was just that pertaining to the alongside unit deliveries, so like the low risk deliveries, or are we talking the obstetric unit as a whole?
No, it's just the alongside unit. So when you're thinking about your cases, it's just women with a BMI of over 35 who are admitted for labour care to the alongside unit. And when you're thinking about the other data that you send us every month on the number of women, it's just women admitted to the alongside unit.
Okay.
And just women who gave birth in the alongside unit.
Lovely. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I'm happy for you to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, and it's easier to do that by talking rather than typing. Dave, is there anything else?
Oh, sorry. Hi, it's Catherine Robinson. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Catherine, yes.
Because of our ladies going home with their notes, that was said earlier, they go home within 6 hours, and the two previous women, it's very likely that by the time somebody comes in with a high BMI, at least the first previous woman, 2 cases before that one will be away home with her notes. Mm-hmm. And then if you're only sending out the data form at the end of the month, will I be able to input data when the lady's in, or do I have to wait to the end of the month? And if I have to wait to the end of the month, all their notes are going to be away home, and it could be a month before they get back in hospital.
When do those notes come back to you?
They would come back about a month after delivery.
Okay, well, that's not too disastrous, because remember, you're on the 1st of February, for instance, you're reporting about the whole of January. So. Yeah. So those women, they may have given birth early in January. Even if they've given birth towards the end of January, you may reply to your reporting email bang on time on the day that it arrives, but you can reply, a week or 2 later. It will generate the cases for you.
We know we already have case in January, but the case in January obviously is away home with their notes, and so are the 2 ladies previous to that. So if we can't input when the lady comes in, if we identify her as a case, we can't put the information in at that time. We have to wait to the end of the month to put it in. So we will always never be able to do it at the time. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's the case. So you need to keep track.
We'll always keep track of all the notes and all the 2 previous controls, and request their notes to come back so we can complete the form.
Exactly. So you need to keep track in your case log. You keep track of who those women are. So in your case log, you know that you've had women in January. You know that when the email comes on the 1st of February, you can report how many cases you've had. You know who that case is, and you know who the 2 controls are. The case ID will be generated.
Is there any way you can get copies of the data required so that we can collate them when the women are in, and then just have them to type in when we actually have access to the forms, so that we don't have to get the notes recalled back into the hospital? So I have to get a secretary to go and pull the notes out. They won't just come straight back to me. They'll come back in a bunch from everybody that went home, and then I'll have to get somebody to go through all of those and pull out the notes of those ladies, and they won't come back together. They'll come back in different boxes, and
they
might come to different areas, so they'll go to different areas. The notes will come back in. They won't come. The notes I'll get in a box from one geographical area, but 3 ladies may come from 3 different geographical areas. So if we had a copy of the data required, then we could collate that information while the women were in, and then input it into the database when you send us it out at the end of the month.
It's David speaking. We can provide a PDF of the data collection forms.
That would be very helpful. Then at least we'd know what information we required.
But you use that as your source data.
We might be able to complete everything, but we'll at least be able to start it and partially complete till the notes were returned, rather than leave everything to have to be done.
Whatever helps you collecting the data. I mean, if some folk may have the notes already, and some folk will have to get from various dates.
We had 2 cases, that could be 6 lots of notes I'm chasing around to try and get. But if we knew we had to collate the data, we might only be able to do 1 or 2 of them at the time, but it would make it easier for us.
We'll provide a PDF of the forms, so you can use that as your data source.
So if it would be helpful, I can include. As I said, we're just putting together the folders to send out to you. If it would be helpful, it might delay slightly the folders going out, but we can put a printed copy of each of the forms into that folder, and then you can photocopy them as you need them, or I can email out electronic PDFs, or I can do both.
Because then we can print them off as we need them. That's fine.
Okay.
There's a couple of questions from, all I have is 95563134. I think one of them may have been answered already, and the first one was, how quickly do you need us to reply to the monthly email?
I think we've answered that.
I think that would have been answered. Second question was, we have a data collection form we use and have used since being open as an EMU. Would this form be helpful to anyone?
I think, again, I might need a little bit more information about what that means specifically before we can answer. Can whoever it was who asked that question about the data collection form that you use in your AMU?
Catherine. It's Kay and Exeter here.
Hi.
We've just, since we've opened as an AMU, we've just collected data around our transfers and our outcomes, and then we produce yearly stats. So it's obviously not a form that's as cohesive as what you could send out, but if anybody would want it, just so they can collect the stats, that we've got it next to. So that was all, if that would be helpful to anybody.
Okay, So it sounds as if it makes more sense for us to send out the data collection forms, the PDFs of the data collection forms from here, probably. But thank you for that offer, and I guess people can get in touch with you directly if they want that for some other purpose. But I think the best option for us is to send out a PDF of the case and control forms, so that you can collect the data if that would be helpful. And Chantal, as you said, I think it's going to be something, as with all of this, systems locally vary so dramatically that it's really about you finding the system that works best for you in terms of identifying the cases, collating the data, entering the data, and so on. If ever you think that there are things that we could do that would help, or if there are things that you do that you think it would be useful to share with other people, then let us know. We'll be sending out a newsletter every quarter. So it's the kind of thing that we might include in the newsletter. For instance, this is something that tips that people have found helpful. So do share information like that with us, and do ask us for help, because there's often things that we can do to help. Okay.
Hi, this is again in Belfast. Sorry, we have a Weight to Healthy Pregnancy initiative at the minute. Is there anything about recording that on, whether they've been involved in any of that during their pregnancy? And this is about weight maintenance programme.
You might have to say that again, Catherine. I missed that. Sorry.
We've got a weight. It's called Weight to Healthy Pregnancy, and women that have BMI over 35 are enlisted into the programme and help to maintain their weight throughout the pregnancy. That would actually be pertinent to your study, but I don't know whether there's anywhere, is there a comments box where you could put on engaged in weight loss programme or weight management programme during pregnancy?
Yeah, you could. So that's the kind of information that you could enter in that anything else you want to tell us box in section 6.
All right, thank you.
We considered asking a specific question about that, but it proved quite difficult, and in the end, the steering group advised us that it was too complex an issue to ask about. But certainly, if there's extra information like that, we'll be happy to have it, and if we can use it in any way, then we will. But yeah, that's exactly the kind of stuff you could enter in that section 6.
Okay. Thank you.
I think we are probably just about done. If there is anything else you want to tell us, now is the time. Anything else you want to ask, now is the time to do that. Otherwise, please do give me a call or email on the UK Mids email that you can see there. We're recording this, and we will put it up on our website alongside the other ones, so you can refresh your memory. A reminder that the guide we're sending out takes you through the data entry system in a step-by-step way as well, so you don't have to remember everything that you've been told today. You'll be able to use that as well. If you're on Twitter, you can follow us on Twitter. We're posting updates on that most days, but please do get in touch. That's the main message. Okay, anything else that anybody wants to say before we say goodbye? No? Okay. Then thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. It's been really useful for us, and I hope it has been for you. We'll be in touch very soon. Okay, bye.